Hello, 5th and 6th grade. This is your video for history for Wednesday, January 12th. And we have 3 pages to do. One is 124. You're going to skip 125. We're not going to go through that little exercise there. But 124 has a lot of information on it because Athens and Sparta were the two main parts of Greece, or main parts of their ancient history. They lasted for a long time, and so they're very well known. And the other 2 pages that you have to do are your study guides that would repeat all the things that we've just done. So focus on that and listen to some of the things that we have for about the people, how they gained wealth and power in Athens, who wrote new laws, and the men who rose to power, and the meetings that were open to the certain adult citizens, and the Athenians, and how they voted and that type of thing. And so there's a lot about their government, about Athenian women, what they did, how the Greeks did some things as far as their leaders and everything. All right, so we'll go ahead to the reading. I'm going to skip pages 166 and 167 because that's kind of a map type thing. Not a map, but it shows you a little bit of the information that you have that sort of generalizes some of the things about the Acropolis, the buildings, the people, what they did, and it shows you a little bit of everyday life. All right, so we'll skip those 2 pages, and don't forget to read them, though. I'm not going to read them, but you should still read them. They're just little captions that are there. All right, so here we go. Athens and Sparta, page number 164. The Dark Ages of Greece, or the Dark Age of Greece. Few records exist to describe what life was like during the Dark Age of Greece. Most knowledge of this time comes from Greek literature. Stories about life in ancient Greece were passed down by word of mouth. After the Greeks developed an alphabet, these stories were written down. The rise of city-states. During the Dark Age, the Greeks were made up of many separate groups. Mountains and valleys divided the land, so the people lived in independent societies scattered throughout Greece. These societies were called city-states. The people in a city-state were like a large family. They claimed common ancestors, practiced the same customs, and spoke the same dialect. At the time, Greece did not have one central government. Instead, each city-state had its own government. A city-state was sometimes ruled by a king. This type of government is called a monarchy, which comes from the Greek word for rule by one. Government and life in Athens and Sparta. The 2 most famous city-states were Athens and Sparta. By the end of the Dark Age, both city-states had adopted another type of government. This new government was called an oligarchy. Both Athens and Sparta were ruled by small groups of nobles who owned their own land. Although Athens and Sparta were once similar to one another, they ended up being very different. After the Dark Age, many city-states branched out and formed colonies along the Mediterranean Sea. People who had gained wealth and power from trading grew discontent with having an oligarchy. Some city-states began to form new ideas about what type of government was best. In Athens, a nobleman named Solon wrote new laws that allowed men of the lower classes to participate in government. Individual men rose to power in Athens, supported by discontented people. These men ruled with absolute authority and were called tyrants. Though we today think of all tyrants as evil rulers, some tyrants actually ruled well. One ruler who made important changes was Cleisthenes. Under his leadership, meetings of the assembly were open to all adult male citizens. There they could speak out on issues and vote. This was a significant step, though many Athenian residents, such as women and slaves, were still excluded from participation in government. Your secret word, is going to be assembly. The Athenians wrote on many types of issues. They voted for leaders. They voted on new laws and who could become a citizen. They voted on whether to go to war. Once a year, if there was someone who needed to be punished, they voted on whether to banish him from Athens for 10 years, or whether to banish him from Athens for 10 years. This punishment was called ostracism, and where we get the word ostracize, that's where you shun somebody, or you keep away from them, or you don't do anything with them. Most voting was done by a show of hands. However, it could also be done using pebbles or potsherds. Potsherds were pieces of pottery, basically. Sometimes during a trial, voters would place black or white pebbles in an urn to express their belief in a person's guilt or innocence. In a decision for ostracism, voters would write on a potsherd the name of the person they thought should be sent away. Many of these potsherds from the 5th century BC have been found in Athens. The assembly met in the agora, a place where citizens gathered to buy and sell. Citizens could buy fresh food that had been brought by local farmers. Since there was not enough good farmland around Athens to produce food for all the people, some foods, such as meats and cheeses, were imported. Import means that they brought it in from another country or another area. Well, imported, it would have to be outside of their city-state. Shoppers in the agora could also find materials such as iron, copper, timber, ivory, animal hides, wool, and papyrus, as well as furniture and textiles. The agora was more than a marketplace. Schools, governmental buildings, courts, and private businesses were also located there. Sometimes people gathered there just to meet with friends and talk. They would discuss politics, philosophy, and the latest news. By 500 BC, new laws in Athens had greatly changed the government. Under Cleisthenes, Athens became the first known democracy. Democratic countries today look back to Athens as a model for how a government by the people might work. The Athenians recognized that a democratic form of government did not necessarily mean a just form of government. For instance, when the island of Melos wanted to remain neutral in a war between Athens and Sparta, the Athenians destroyed Melos. Some Athenians, such as Thucydides, thought that the assembly was too easily persuaded to go to war. The most famous leader of the Athenian democracy was Pericles. He is considered one of the greatest public speakers or orators of all time. The Greeks made him their leader because they respected his wisdom and his ability to reason. Pericles encouraged as many people as possible to take part in the Athenian government. He even paid people to be officers in the assembly and to serve on juries. Through his speeches, Pericles helped define the democracy of Athens. All right, now, as I said, we're skipping the next two because you can just read that on your own. There's a lot of different parts there. But then the last page here, in 168, Sparta. Unlike Athens, Sparta kept its oligarchy. Sparta's primary goal was to have a strong army. For centuries, Sparta made no significant advances in art or literature as Athens and other city-states did. Life in Sparta was much more rigid than life in Athens. When a baby boy was born in Sparta, his parents presented him to the rulers of the city. If the rulers thought he was strong, they allowed him to live. If not, they left him in the countryside to die. The Spartans did not want any weaklings in their army. A boy who was accepted stayed at home until he was 7 years old. Then the army took him and trained him to be a soldier. During most of his young adult life, a Spartan boy lived in army barracks with other boys. Life in the barracks was designed to prepare them for warfare. The boys had little to eat. They were expected to steal food from farms, but they were punished if they were caught. They were taught to live by their wits so that they would be prepared to survive during wartime. Every year, some of the boys were beaten in public as part of the ceremony to the gods. The beatings were meant to help the boys learn to endure pain. Sounds like a good plan. Maybe we should try that again today. What do you guys think? Okay, so they don't think that was a good idea. Around age 20, a Spartan man would marry, but he could not live at home with his wife. He had to live with the other men, training to be a soldier for 10 more years. The training a man received in the Spartan army was harsh and disciplined. The Spartans believed that learning to suffer pain and hardship would make a man a good soldier. Women in Athens and Sparta. Athenian women spent most of their time at home. An upper-class woman was accompanied by servants when she did have to leave her house for events such as festivals. Slaves did the daily shopping and ran errands. Even lower-class women who did not have slaves rarely shopped or worked outside the home. Athenian women were skilled at spinning and weaving. A few women from wealthy families learned to read and write at home. In Sparta, women also managed their households, but since the men were often away from home with the army, the women had more responsibilities than the women in Athens. Spartan women went out in public more than Athenian women. Some even owned property. Like the men, Spartan women received physical training. This training was designed to make them strong mothers. Mothers taught their children to be brave and loyal to Sparta. Plutarch writes that one mother handed her son his shield and instructed him to return as either a living conqueror or a dead hero. The Spartan army had no room for cowards or quitters. All right, well, that's it. And if you missed the secret word, you have to go back to between 3:30 and minute 3:30 and minute 4 to find out what it was. Have a good day. See you tomorrow. Bye.